Welcome back everyone, my name is Jacob Rucker, and in today's video I'm going to be giving you the full sleep optimization guide. In today's video you will not be learning how long you should be sleeping. I'm not going to be telling you sleep 7 to 9 hours, you all know that. What I am going to be telling you is how to maximize your amount of time in deep sleep while you are in bed. I want to maximize the amount of time you are asleep, and I don't want you to wake up throughout the night. So with that being said, I want to get straight into the information on maximizing your sleep quality. I remember not too long ago, I'd lay in bed for 30 minutes, an hour, sometimes even 2 hours, and my brain would just be racing, constantly thinking of things, and I was wide awake. It seemed like that was the period of time where I had the most energy throughout my day. And by implementing these things, I changed it from having the most energy at bedtime to falling asleep every single night within 2 minutes of laying down. And I stay asleep the whole night, every single night. And on top of that, I wake up in the morning energized. In fact, my biggest issue went from falling asleep to actually waking up too early with too much energy. I'd set my alarm for 6 a.m. and I'd wake up at sunrise at 5:20 a.m. just fully ready to go for the day because my sleep was such high quality. So if that sounds like what your goal is, then stay tuned and listen to this video. Now, before I get into the tips, I'm going to be giving you one crucial part of your body. Now, this actually influences your entire body. Every single organ and every single cell inside of your body is influenced by this. And this is your circadian rhythm. Your circadian rhythm is essentially what you could think of as the clock inside of your body. This clock is set by the different actions that you take throughout your day. The primary action is light or light exposure, and I'm going to be giving advice later on how to manipulate your light exposure, but it's important to know that the primary thing that sets this clock is light, but it also is influenced by exercise and eating. So if you struggle with setting this clock, which I'll explain more about, then you're going to do other activities to assist in setting it. Now, when we relate this clock to sleep, it's important to understand two hormones, and those two hormones are cortisol and melatonin. Cortisol is what's going to wake you up, and melatonin is what's going to make you fall asleep. When you wake up, you have a pulse of cortisol in your system. That pulse of cortisol is what deploys energy. Cortisol is something that deploys energy. So we want to manipulate it later to be able to get as much energy as possible in the morning and calm it down as much as possible later at night. And then the other thing is melatonin, which puts you in a parasympathetic state, makes you sleepy, and this melatonin is delayed by the cortisol pulse. So the later you have cortisol pulsing, the later you're going to get this melatonin release, and this is often a big cause of insomnia. Now, all of you may roll your eyes when you hear my first tip. It's pretty basic, pretty boring, but it must be said, and you must acknowledge it inside your head and think it out and really agree with this statement. Sleep is the priority in your life. And why is this so important? It's important because sleep is really what controls everything throughout your life. There's not a single thing that your body performs or your brain performs that you could say isn't influenced by sleep. So do you want to be the individual giving 80% into all tasks in life? Or do you want to be doing those tasks a bit less, but giving your 100% into those tasks because you are fully rested and feel amazing? You're going to feel like the outlier sometimes. Most people don't do this. Some things are going to be inconvenient, frustrating, whatever you name, but eventually it is just going to become smooth. It's going to become a part of life, and you're going to realize on the days where you do slack off or go off of your routine or don't listen to my advice, your sleep quality is worse and your next day is worse because of that. So it's just simply not worth it. You need to acknowledge that inside of your head right now. And with that being said, I'm going to move on, but pause the video if you need longer to think it through. The first thing you need to implement in your routine is to go to bed and wake up at the exact same time every single day. It could fluctuate by 30 minutes, but recent studies have shown that this is just as important as the amount of time that you spend asleep. This is why there's a whole trend of the whole idea of sleep less and grind more. You don't need that time, likely because there's people who fall asleep and sleep for that long, don't feel that rested. And then there's other individuals who don't sleep for that long and they feel amazing because they actually go to bed at the same time every day, wake up at the same time every day, and they feel very rested because they had perfect sleep quality or amazing sleep quality compared to you with very low sleep quality. The reason behind this is because it screws up that circadian rhythm we were mentioning earlier. When you're bouncing all around, your body doesn't know what the hell is going on. How should it know when to deploy melatonin, when to deploy cortisol, what's going on if you're just always changing the times you're waking up and going to bed? Of course your energy is inconsistent, your life is inconsistent. And a lot of people's excuse is, well, then I have to miss out on so many social events. Then people don't want to hang out with me. And what I have to say to you is do what your dad told you as a child. Be a leader, not a follower. If an individual isn't going to prioritize you because you're going to bed on time and actually treating your sleep as something that's high importance, then you don't want to be friends with that individual. That's not somebody you want to hang out with. Or if it's a woman, you don't want to be dating that woman. The next tip I have for you that's really going to improve your sleep is actually when you wake up, because when you wake up, that's the primary time where you get light into your eyes and that clock is set inside of your head. And with that being said, you need to be waking up by 7 a.m. and getting sunlight before 8 a.m. And what this is going to do is it's going to give you a different wavelength because the sun is lower and it's going to be a contrast of blues and yellows. Your retina is actually very sensitive to this contrast of colors, and it's really going to alert it that this is the time that we need to be waking up, and it's going to spike your cortisol very high. And because that cortisol is spiked, then it's going to be dropping throughout the day, and you're going to be feeling very energized, and you're going to be feeling great that day. You do this for a few days in a row, and you'll notice that your body naturally wakes up at this time. Like I mentioned earlier, I can't sleep in. I am incapable now of sleeping in because I follow this routine. In fact, not only do I get 2 minutes of sunlight every single day when I wake up, but when I wake up, I also open my window so I get direct sunlight into my house, into my eyes, to continue setting my circadian rhythm throughout the day whenever I am doing work on my computer. Research actually shows that if you miss this wavelength, then it impacts your entire body negatively. It really impacts your brain and your ability to control stress because those levels do become inconsistent. So if you are an individual who struggles from depression or stress, then this may be something that really helps you out. A replacement that I've heard of a lot of individuals doing is a bright light box. Bright light boxes are 10,000 lux and they attempt to mimic the wavelength of the sun. The issue is this doesn't actually fulfill the duties of the sun. The sun gets up to 100,000 lux, which is nowhere near 10,000. Like I mentioned earlier, your retina isn't sensitive enough to actually be woken up by this bright light box, and the wavelength still isn't the same, so it won't actually set the clock within your body. So I really do recommend taking the natural route and just seeing the sun, getting 2 minutes of sunlight every single morning before 8 a.m. rather than looking for workarounds for this. The next thing I'll be covering is a bedtime routine. Now, it's important to understand what the goal of the bedtime routine is, and it's pretty obvious. It's to calm you down. Now, there's a few things to take note of. First of all, you really need to avoid any light exposure during this bedtime routine. So block out 30 minutes before bed for this bedtime routine, and during it, you're not going to be giving yourself any light exposure. And make sure you do whatever bathroom duties that you have to do before this routine, because it really will wake you up and disrupt this sleepiness if you do have to get up and do whatever duties. But I think it's important to throw out there the number one thing that you think of when you think of bedtime routine. What does everybody suggest if you're not on phones? They suggest reading. Now, I personally am not a fan of reading. I read during the day while my mind is active, while I'm awake, normally in the sunlight to give my body extra sunlight. But before bed, I find that it clogs your thoughts. When you're reading, you're not necessarily thinking of anything but the book. And the issue this leaves is that if you're an individual with plenty of thoughts, then you're going to close the book, lay down, and your brain's going to be thinking of so many things. Your mind's going to be racing, and you're going to feel like you just wasted your time with this whole bedtime routine, and bedtime routines are useless. Rather than doing that, I actually recommend that you do something where you can get your thoughts out. One great thing is journaling. Go ahead and take a notebook, start journaling and writing down your thoughts throughout the day. This will really increase your mind's productivity and really teach you to be disciplined. But on top of that, it'll really help your transition to sleep, because when you get all your thoughts out on paper, then your brain no longer feels the urge to be thinking them out. You just thought them out. You just have them on paper. So why would you be overthinking them? Another thing that you can do, which is what I do, is I FaceTime my girlfriend before bed. Now, you may be asking, Jacob, you just said screens are off limit before bed. And that is 100% true. When I FaceTime her, I don't even really FaceTime her. I have my phone face down while we're on FaceTime, and we just talk for like 30 minutes before bed because we don't see each other too often. So I find that's a great way. If you find somebody to talk to, then you really could both just get your thoughts out before bed, and your mind's going to be so much calmer if you just hang up and fall asleep. The other thing I have to mention, if you do this or if you're talking to an individual before bed, make sure you set your alarm on your phone so you never actually have to get that light exposure from it. You're only using it as a device to, well, bond with the person and get your brain set up to transition into sleep. Now, with this information, you're likely wondering, how do you push your sleep schedule back? I am exhausted. My body will not let me get out of bed in the mornings if I just jump backwards and start waking up at 6 a.m., 5:30 a.m., whatever time I want to. And the way you do that is actually by pushing it back very slowly. And the reason behind this is because of your temperature minimum. Your temperature minimum is between an hour and a half to 2 hours before you wake up. If you push back your wake up time into that window or before your temperature minimum occurs, then what's going to happen is it's actually going to delay your circadian rhythm. So the next day, you're going to want to sleep in later. If you push back your sleep schedule by 30 minutes to an hour, then you're not going to fall into that window before your temperature minimum. And what's going to happen is your body's naturally going to start waking up at that time. To assist this, make sure you're doing a lot of circadian rhythm setting tasks. Get your sunlight immediately the second you wake up while you're doing this, while you're trying to push your schedule back. And then once you get your sunlight, go ahead and eat and then go to the gym afterwards. All this stuff is going to help you set your circadian rhythm, and you're going to have a lot of cortisol deployed in the morning, and your body's going to realize, hey, this is our new wake up time. The last thing I'd like to mention is if you have a timer on your lights, or if you have an individual who could turn on your lights, a study showed that if you turned on your lights 45 minutes before you woke up, then this also pushed back your circadian rhythm without you actually waking up any earlier. So just keep waking up at the same time, turn on your lights 45 minutes before you wake up, and naturally over time, you'll fall asleep earlier and wake up earlier. Now I'd like to properly discuss cortisol. Anybody who's heard the word cortisol thinks of it as this bad thing, this thing that makes you stressed out that you don't want to have in your system. And as far as going to bed, that is true. Going to bed having low cortisol is a very large factor and something that you completely want to aim for. It is very bad if you have high levels of cortisol before bed. But one way you do that is actually by increasing your cortisol in the morning. If you do start the day with that really high energy level and spiking your cortisol, then your body is going to naturally have it drop over time, and it will get very low before bed, assuming you're doing tasks to assist that drop or that transition throughout your day. And because of that, your day routine is very important. I would love to go on about cortisol, but I could make an entire video about it. It's something that's very responsive to what you do throughout your day. The good thing is there's always something you could do to manipulate it, but there's simply too much to say to schedule it around every one of your lives. And that's why I think right now is the perfect time to announce the release of my coaching service. On my website, you could sign up for direct one-on-one coaching from me, where I will help build your schedule around your life to optimize your hormones, optimize your sleep, optimize your lifting, and I will build you lifting programs. If diet is your goal, then I could build you diet plans. It really just depends on what your stage in life is, but we will work to maximize your improvement and make you improve every single day. And my goal is to make it so you always know the next step to take to progress your life even further. On top of that, you will get a monthly one-on-one call with me and weekly check-ins to make sure you never plateau. And right now, I am offering 10 spots at a $70 discounted rate. These codes will go fast. I have gotten plenty of messages requesting coaching, and I cannot give these codes out again because it is directly with me. I only have so much time, so don't wait. Click the first link in the description at SpartanElites.com if you are interested. After talking about cortisol, it's only natural to talk about melatonin, which is essentially the opposite. While cortisol deploys energy and wakes you up, melatonin puts your body in a parasympathetic state and relaxes you and calms you down, gets you ready for sleep. Melatonin coupled with adenosine is what's going to really make you sleepy and help you fall asleep at night. Melatonin is actually very important for your brain. It's extremely neuroprotective, and it really influences your brain just aging healthily. Now, naturally, that makes you ask, well, how could I influence it? How could I get more of it at night? Now, you can't really influence it too much. The only way you could influence it is by adjusting your cortisol and having your cortisol releases earlier in the morning and then having it calm down in that pattern I said, because when it does drop to a certain level, that's when melatonin starts getting released. So if you take something like ashwagandha to lower your cortisol, then it's going to help your melatonin be released. But overall, it's just responsive from cortisol. And on top of that, naturally, you're going to be thinking, well, normally when I hear of melatonin, I hear of the supplement melatonin. And a lot of people talk about melatonin, and they mention the one downside of taking melatonin. When you take melatonin, it actually impacts your ability to stay asleep later in the night. So around 7 hours of sleep, you're going to be waking up and not being able to fall asleep if you took a higher dose of melatonin. Now, the solution to this is to go ahead and take a lower dose. You could actually take a very minimal dose, which isn't necessarily going to be something that you feel. What it's actually going to do is help you stay asleep once you are asleep. So when you take this super small dose, it makes you realize that melatonin isn't meant to put you asleep. It's meant to help you stay asleep when you're taking it as a supplement. Now, the reason that came about is because of how melatonin is sold. Melatonin being sold is a huge issue. It's 88% of labels have been seen as inaccurate in studies or have an inaccurate dosage, having up to 347% the amount that they have on the label, which is likely intentional. It's likely to get you to buy more because if you're taking that much melatonin, you're going to get used to it and your body's naturally going to not think it needs natural melatonin or natural production of melatonin. So make sure you get it from a very reputable brand. Do your research before you buy your melatonin and take 1 to 3 milligrams. The standard dose is 5 milligrams. Take 1 to 3, and this is going to help assist you stay asleep throughout the night. Next thing on the list is the temperature of your sleeping environment. Now, the temperature is actually extremely important. Why? It's because your body needs to drop by 2 degrees to fall asleep. If this 2-degree drop in temperature does not happen, you will not fall asleep. If it is in a hot environment, then your body needs to force this drop in temperature. That's why you really struggle to sleep if you are in a very hot environment. And on top of that, to stay asleep, your body has to continue dropping its temperature throughout the night. So, utilizing this knowledge, we could think of what type of sleeping environment do we want? Obviously, we want something where we could cool down. But if we have an environment where we could cool down, then how are we supposed to stay warm? We stay warm with blankets. Now, your hands and your feet, and actually around your eyes, have the most sensors to absorb heat. So when you put on plenty of blankets, then what your body is going to naturally do is poke your limbs out, poke your hands out to cool your body down. When you get cold or cool, you're going to pull your hands or your feet back in, and you're going to fall asleep perfectly. If you cannot do that, then you will not stay asleep effectively, and you will not fall asleep effectively, because throughout the night, your body's still going to be doing this naturally. You're naturally going to poke your hands out, your feet out to lower your body temperature. It's something that we do subconscious. Now, if you're an individual who utilizes an eye mask and you notice you take it off throughout the night, in almost all the cases, it's because these sensors around your eyes are being blocked, so your body cannot cool down effectively. And the solution to that is just to lower your room's temperature more, where you can poke your hands and feet out and lower your body temperature quicker. And this may lead you to ask, well, what's the perfect temperature for my sleeping environment? There is no perfect temperature, but it's almost always better to have it colder than hotter. Always drop it further than you think, and then add more blankets on top of you. Utilize those blankets to stay warm, and then your body could adjust its temperature how you want by poking your hands and feet out. It's also pretty important to note when you're eating, and eating actually relates to your body temperature. If you eat too close to bed, digestion heats up your body quite a lot from the amount of energy it uses. So you don't want to eat within 4 hours of bed. And when you are eating your dinner, you may be asking, are proteins good? Are fats good? Are carbohydrates good? Protein is fine throughout the day at any time. Protein's never going to be bad. Carbohydrates you want to be careful with, because you could develop insulin resistance from consuming a lot of carbs and then going straight to bed or not burning them off in any activity. But it is important to note that carbs do help you fall asleep, and they assist the sleeping process. So it is nice to have a decent amount of carbs before bed. And then finally, fat. Fat is a great thing before bed too, so you want to have a very balanced meal before bed. As far as alcohol, never use it for sleeping purposes. It completely obliterates your deep sleep. You don't get any deep sleep if you drink that night, so avoid alcohol if you can. And then caffeine is fine earlier in the day. I mentioned earlier that you want to spike your cortisol. It's actually amazing to have caffeine 2 hours after waking and not within 8 hours of your bedtime. If you consume caffeine within 2 hours of waking, then you multiply your adenosine receptors, which is going to make you more groggy in the mornings, and you're going to crave caffeine, because caffeine pushes the adenosine to the side, binds to the adenosine receptors, and then the adenosine comes back later, but this also increases the amount of adenosine receptors inside of your body. So the 3 rules I go by for caffeine is not to have it within 2 hours of waking, under 400 milligrams a day, and don't have it within 8 hours of bed. Worst case, if I do need an energy shot before going to bed, then I like to drink green tea. I still don't drink this within 4 hours of bed. It has a slight amount of caffeine, but it also has certain things in it that assist you falling asleep. So I sort of look at it as a little bit of fuel. That's not necessarily optimal, but it's the best source of caffeine you could have that won't impact your sleep too much. I have one bonus tip before you guys go, and that's the only way to mitigate the effects of light before bed. That's by looking at the sunset, because the wavelength actually helps mitigate these effects and set your circadian rhythm in a way where it doesn't get impacted as much. So if you know you're going to be looking at screens, then make sure you look at the sunset before bed. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out my coaching website, first link in the description. And as always, remember, as lifelong learners, perspicacity is our grindstone for success. Keep on grinding, boys.